This is the Gopher Puck Live podcast, part of the Pull Tab Sports family.
Oh boy. Jupe making mistakes. I love it.
Wait, did you drink that entire bottle?
Almost.
Oh, okay, never mind. Okay.
There we go.
I don't want to talk about it. not until it happens.
Somebody calls it Nick the bottles every Thursday, Friday night at Grandma's Restaurant Saloon, 18 party, 21 to drink. Come on down. Leo, how was your recruiting?
My recruiting, I probably had 76 D1 offers.
Now, here's Jupiter and Vigo. Good evening and welcome to the GPL podcast, episode number 308. Boy, lots happened in the last week, Vigs. A lot happened.
Yeah, I tried to get away for a little bit of a weekend up north, and I was thinking I'd just unplug a little bit, take some time to relax. I think I was probably on my phone more this last week than I've been in quite some time. And it was fun reaching out with all of our sources out there, trying to pin this coach hire down. But they finally got their guy. Like I said, Mark Coyle likes to act quickly. And, Tuesday, here we go.
Too bad it wasn't Monday when they had the other announcement at the same time. We were there back-to-back days, weren't we?
Probably a little bit, they didn't want to take the shine off of Greg May's hiring on Monday. Or maybe there were some loose ends to wrap up for Tuesday.
There probably was some loose ends. I'm guessing there was some loose ends. Let me do something real quick here. Let me see right there, Vigs. There he is, our new coach, Brett Larson. Initial thoughts?
Well, I do think of all the candidates out there, Brett Larson was probably the safest hire that they could have made.
Okay.
He's a guy who gets it, how to be part of our program as like a CEO. We've talked about how important that is with college hockey these days is you can't just be a coach, can't just be a recruiter. You've got to be a marketer. You've got to be a media personality. You've got to be able to do the GM part of it and manage your roster. And I think Brett Larson checks a lot of those boxes that Mark Coyle is looking to hire in a head coach. And all the people I've talked to in the last week have spoken very highly of Brett. And they are excited for him to get out of St. Cloud because that is an institution that's going to be a challenge for anybody to bring back to the success that they were used to before Brett got there. And Minnesota got the guy.
I will be honest. At first, when I started hearing his name last week, I was getting a little nervous. I'm like, God, St. Cloud hasn't been doing good. A lot of Gopher fans. Oh no, don't pick him. Oh, I'm ticked now. I can't believe you picked him. And then I started, actually looking at his resume. You look at he's been under quite a few guys. He's been at the World Juniors. He's won a couple national championships as an assistant coach. He was at the Olympics. But the St. Cloud record doesn't look great. But boy, it certainly coincides with the beginning of NIL when things started going downhill at St. Cloud. And now the last year or two, it's changed quite a bit. And maybe he got out of Dodge at the right time.
Yeah, you can always say that, he's leaving with the program on the decline. But when he was there, he got them to a Frozen Four.
And that's just it.
He got them into the NCAA tournament in a very tough league, the NCHC, and he held on to some good players who came back to play for him extra years.
Mm-hmm.
I think the last 2 years, probably not the best for St. Cloud, but I think there's a lot of circumstances surrounding that situation that is going to make it hard to be successful there. But when you look at Brett, he was a guy who recruited key players for UMD's championships. He was a guy that was picked by David Carl to help out at World Juniors, and they had a lot of success there.
He helped Ohio State too.
And he helped Ohio State too. That's right. Steve Rolick and him were together, and he did good things there as well. And all these people speak highly of him. Like none of them were upset when he left for other jobs because they appreciated the character that he has. And I think that's a key thing to consider going forward.
And it basically falls into the thing we've been fearing for quite a few years now. St. Cloud is a city not thriving. St. Cloud is a university declining enrollment. Something, we're supposed to hate on St. Cloud. Yes, you hate on your rivalries, but only to a point, Viggs. And I am genuinely concerned about this program. And it probably definitely affected Brett Larson because he knows, like, gosh, I'm not getting the kind of support I need to run the kind of program that St. Cloud needs.
Yeah, and like their ice rink is getting some renovations underway this summer, but a lot of that's state funded. It's not like the donors came through with a bunch of money to do the renovations there. So I just think that the college landscape is changing quite a bit right now, and it's moving under our feet. And Minnesota gives him an opportunity to be really aggressive there. And I think Gopher fans probably are going to have to be patient and see what he does this summer, because I think as soon as the Frozen Four is over, this staff is going to be very aggressive going out and getting players in the portal, getting players in the CHL, and maybe shaking up the recruiting pipeline just a little bit.
So Brett Larson, he's 53 years old. He's my age, turns 54, I believe, in August. Nice. I love a Gen Xer. Now we got a Gen Xer in there finally. Are my generation. Yes, he's had a lot of success. From Duluth, the Denfeld kid, a Northern kid. What's the intangibles he brings?
I think just his ability to connect and the ability to be a little bit more of a coach who's engaged with his players. Like you could even see it in his team meeting. He's not standing up.
No, I was just
faces. He's taking a stall. He's in a stall and he's looking everybody in the eye at the same level. And he just wants to connect with players that way. You heard about Brock Faber, his public comments to Mike Russo, touting how good of a guy he is at coaching and connecting. And I think that's a key. I think you heard from a couple former players as well that were impressed with Brett's ability to connect.
Yeah, I was just thinking the exact same thing. Him sitting there just kind of almost like BSing with the guys. It's quite interesting. And poor Viggs, he's a little under the weather. He's got some tea going tonight. What kind of tea is it? What do you get? A little Earl Grey?
Little throat coat going.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Nice. A little honey in there?
Not yet.
Oh.
Got to keep the sweeteners out of there.
It's that northern trip you took. It took a little out of you. That temperature off the lake maybe was affecting you.
Something. We'll see. Hopefully I rally out of it quick.
So it's interesting. So when Motzko's let go, the rest of the staff is not let go at the same time. They kept running basically the program, just the day-to-day operations. All the coaches were there, during the first meeting we had on Monday for Boom, and they were all there yesterday. So it's not like the whole thing just disappears right away. It was just Bob let go. But now comes their evaluation. So we've heard a lot of rumors, blah, 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 but he's going to take the next couple of days, probably the rest of this week, and evaluate the current staff.
Yeah, I believe the staff contracts run through the end of April for these coaches. Mm-hmm. So there is a little bit of a time there where they're still under contract here. They're still doing the work. They're still going to be transitioning guys to the next staff. I remember Scott Bell, when Motzko was hired, didn't really have any conversations about whether he's going to get retained or not. And then Motzko was on the radio with Paul Allen. I think he said, "Oh yeah, Scott Bell, he'll be back. He's a good recruiter." And Scott was just like, "Well, I guess I'm going to be back." He didn't know up until that moment. But we'll see. I'm sure Brett Larson has some of his own guys. Corey Leyland's been rumored to be one of the guys who might be on staff. Matt Cullen could be a part of the staff somehow. He's probably clued in to be like a GM type role, player development role. He's been involved with Fargo. He's been involved with Moorhead. And of course, his family has done very well developing some young hockey players. So he's very familiar with these age groups. And then Paul Martin might be a member of the staff. We've often wondered, does he want to take that next step and be a full-time coach, or is he happy in his role that he currently has? So I think, that stuff will play out probably over the next 2 weeks and see what actually does work for the staff. And if anybody does get retained from the current staff, we'll see.
Because ideally you need to be kind of set before and really the Frozen Four before the hubbub gets going and everyone's going out to Vegas. They're meeting each other, and definitely before the portal opens on, I believe, the 13th, the Monday after Frozen Four.
Yeah, especially if you have someone who's in that GM role that's trying to set up that kind of philosophy and format and engagement with the hockey community. You would like that in place as quickly as possible. And I think that's one of the reasons why Mark Coyle wanted to move quickly. He's done this before. Nico Medved, Don Plawski, Keegan Cook. These were all hires that were made during the men's basketball tournament where he's traveling, he's trying to fit in Zooms as much as he can, and he's talking to people at these tournaments and things and trying to get the best inside intel that he can get. And it's worked out pretty well for women's basketball this year. They're going to the Sweet 16, and I think Nico Medved's doing some good things with men's basketball and Keegan Cook and volleyball as well. So, Mark, he's taking a lot of flack right now from the community, but these hires have been pretty good.
But here's the thing: you're going to hear flack everywhere. You're gonna have people say, "Oh, this is the worst hire ever." I can't believe. Look at his record over the last 3 years. He's terrible. I'm like, there's just people need to have their little vision a little wider scoped, Vigs, instead of just looking at one little thing, don't they?
Well, I think the thing you look at with Brett is the championships he's been a part of.
Mm-hmm.
He's been a key player in these, and it's not like these coaches have said, "No, he was along for the ride." He was a major component of those programs that had success. And we asked him a little bit about what makes him a difference maker on a staff when it comes to winning championships. And he talked a little bit about his attention to detail, putting his thumb on players and getting the grit out of them that he needs. And just putting together a roster that's confident going into these tournaments is a big part of it.
That was the first time I never really got to meet Bob like you did. I'm always just the guy in the background. So this time I made sure I went up and introduced myself to Brett Larson. Seemed like a very personable guy. So I enjoyed my time with him. I took some time and met Peyton Owens, who was on the committee, and he's a new member of the athletic director's staff. Boy, he's a positive guy, just like you said. That was a joy speaking with Peyton.
Yeah, I think he's going to be good for the program. One of the things that we're kind of coming out of Mariucci the last couple of weeks has been just the concern over the athlete experience. This was a team that at the end of the way had a lot of issues that they were dealing with, a lot of negativity. It wasn't a great environment. They kind of put a brave face on it and competed to get through. But you could just tell that when things went down a little bit this season, it was hard for them to rally back. They had some moments where they got off to good starts and they were able to persevere, but this team just kind of struggled. And I think Peyton's one of those guys. He's looking to remove roadblocks for people. He's looking to improve that communication. And I think he's going to be a good attribute to the program.
Now is the waiting time. It's going to be an interesting 2 weeks because
waiting time.
Yeah.
We know that there's going to be stuff going on behind the scenes.
Oh, correct.
It's the way this is working. But for us following it, we're not going to know much for another 2 weeks.
All I know is that we're going to be busy probably on Monday when the portal opens in just over 2 weeks, or actually a little more than that. But we've been revamping our portal this year, Vigs. We're trying to help out our guy from up north who gets all that data for us. It loads instantly now. In fact, now I've talked with Tim Bruley. We're sharing our data with Tim Bruley now, just like he shares data with us. So it's a little give and take there. The portal's a big deal. And you know what? GPL is a big deal with the portal, especially the women's portal. Boom. First day, 60 plus ladies jumped into the portal, and they're getting it from us, Vigs. We're proud of that.
Yeah, that's good. We're one of the few people that put out a women's transfer portal. And I think, Brad Frost left the program in good shape with players, but Boomer is going to be in there looking to revamp the bottom of his roster. In his introductory press conference, he was talking about adding grit to his team. And I thought that was an interesting commonality between the two hires, both Kavitsy Coyle, that, they needed programs that, put a little more bite into their roster and a little bit more intention there. And so I think it's interesting. Both teams are going to be active in the portal, you'd think.
Yeah, and like you said, we didn't really mention, but Greg Boom May, he got that Boom name when he was a kid, according to the story he told us on Monday. Replacing Brad Frost, who had been there. I mean, this is only the third coach the women's team's ever had since they started in the late 90s or mid to late 90s.
Yeah, and it's no easy task for
No.
Boomer either. It's pretty obvious that all the questions were revolving around how do you get better than Ohio State and Wisconsin?
Ugh.
So pretty simple. The top 2 programs in the country you got to beat. So that's the task put out to him. And he's got a lot of talent on his roster, but he's trying to figure out how to make that talent play a little grittier and have a dedicated style. And he talked about how Wisconsin just outskills you and Ohio State's going to suffocate you. They got to blend that and form their own identity. And he kind of talked about how this year's team had a hard time finding an identity. And so I think that's an important part of a new coach. And we know when Bob Motzko came and took the job about 8 years ago, he said, he wanted his players to give 45 seconds of hell to the other team. And I don't know if we saw that throughout the end of that tenure, but that's the intention. And as much as people can say, this coach can do this or this coach can do that, it's like we got to see it on the ice. So see these hires, coach their teams and build their rosters.
When Brett was talking yesterday, that was the first thing I thought was the 45 seconds of hell, like you just mentioned. I think it's funny. We were kind of thinking the same thing. I'm kind of with you. I'm not sure we ever saw that.
We saw it at times,
and that's there's no consistency. Yeah.
I think especially, the team that went to Tampa, that was a very deep team that had shifts that were connected and guys at the bottom of the lineup who were okay providing that role for their team. And I think as we've gone, into the years that haven't gone as well, we don't have players that play like that. We have every player trying to test the waters and figure out, how hot the stove is and try to get away with their skill. And sometimes you just got to swallow that pride and deliver that. And it's a big part of a coach is how do you communicate that to your players and get that out of your players?
So there's just a lot of talk, and we can't verify anything really. It's just a lot of people say, "Hey, this, ooh, that." But the rumor is, like Zemer might not be happy, Mooney might not be happy, other guys might not be happy, and we don't know if they're happy now. And a new coach is making everything change. But we've heard those rumors. Some other schools might be throwing some money at these guys. And somebody asked, I think it might have been Mike Mack saying, "Hey, are you willing to spend $750,000?" He's using McKenna as the example to be able to do that. And Coyle was kind of like, "Yeah, they'll kind of bring it to me." I mean, I think this is something they need to seriously look at because they could get left behind as a premier program if they don't put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge for Brett Larson to figure out, how to best to use the resources he can gather and how much time he wants to spend gathering those resources to spend on NIL. We've talked to other people. It can be a little bit tricky to get that money to come into Dickie Town athletes or get it in the Golden Helmet group and then get it into the players' hands. It's complicated. There's this NIL Go thing that has to, check all the money and make sure it's for something that's legit. It can't just be handing over money. So it's a challenge that hockey's going to have to face. And I think the model at Minnesota isn't going to be spend that big amount on one player because Minnesota is going to have deep rosters. There's going to be lots of talent. And I've often said, I think the better money spent is getting Mooney and Zemer to come back. Once they've shown that they can play at the college level, if you come back for that third year, if you come back for that fourth year, there's going to be some name, image, likeness opportunities for you. One, you're a more marketable player because everybody's seen you in that maroon and gold jersey and they know what you can do on the ice and they've seen the highlights. You look at LJ Mooney in the Excel Energy ad that's out there, people know who he is and they connect with that. So I think that's something that Minnesota's going to have to find their niche to manage. You hear David Carl talk about NIL. He's like, I don't think we're going to be in that space where we're paying one player big bucks. We're going to be a little more distributed with it because we just think that's the way it should go at hockey.
And that's the interesting thing. And that's kind of like, that was sort of Bob's way of too. Like, we're not going to give a freshman or somebody just coming in a bunch of money. It's not what they wanted to do. But like you said, LJ Mooney, he's been out there now. He's had a season. People know who he is. Excel Energy commercial. But right now I can tell the fans are nervous. You see a Zemer or Mooney leave. Does, Humphreys go with him? Because they're kind of their buddies from back in the, the USA team. So there's a lot of nervous people out there, Viggs.
Well, I think that's why you hire Coach Fast, is so Brett Larson can talk to these guys and figure it out early. When Bob was hired, Casey Middlestat was already out the door. It didn't even really have a chance to retain him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
after
that's
one season too. Yeah.
Yep. So I think that's why you move fast here, and you give Brett a chance to form a relationship with those guys, maybe explore what the NIL opportunities are to keep them happy, because Michigan State and Penn State are chasing these guys. They've got the money in their bankroll that they would like to spend, and sometimes it's a two-way thing. You can add to your roster and you can take away from someone else's if you go in conference like that.
Speaking of the roster, we kind of talked about a little bit, they've got a lot of players coming in. We don't know if that's all going to stay static. We don't know if things will change because the coaches, kids are analyzing it, parents are analyzing it, coaches are analyzing it. But if things were to stay pat, it appears that they're going to have to either cut 1, 2, 3, or 4 players at least, without even making any of those other kind of changes or not.
I think there's going to be hard conversations as they try to rework this roster. We saw this year that they weren't deep enough, and they had players that weren't, holding up their end of the bargain here. And I'm sure Brett's got some guys from St. Cloud who would be interested in trading the red and black for the maroon and gold, and he'll have to figure out where that fits. Minnesota definitely could use help at center. There's some center options at St. Cloud that would fit. They could also use some defensemen. I think there's 1 or 2 from St. Cloud that might fit in Minnesota as well. And then you just have to really start finding out what other players can you add. Because I think if you look 2 years down the road, Minnesota's got a lot of really strong recruits coming in. But, you got to bridge that gap, and you got to have the right fit of upperclassmen and underclassmen to make your roster work. So Brett's got his work cut out for him here to figure this out in the next 2 weeks.
To say the least, he does.
Well, and the other thing I think is like what recruits might flip that we didn't think before.
Mm-hmm.
Are we thinking Mason West, who plays for Cullen's Fargo team, would be interested in changing his commitment from Michigan State to Minnesota? He was a player that the current staff didn't really want to go after. Those late blooming big guys sometimes are a challenge. You can't have too many of those, it seems like, on your roster. But
was there a Zemer family member or brother that was at St. Cloud or something like that? There was some kind of connection with Larson and Zemer's family. And I wish I could remember what I was told.
Did not hear that narrative, but
I think
the 2 biggest players are Mooney and Zemer.
Yes.
Make sure that they're coming back. And
if
they want to do other things, they want to do other things. And it's never been easier to leave a team in college hockey than it is today. So they have a lot of power.
Very true. Oh, geez. It's just going to be a crazy couple of weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think things to look for are centers and defensemen. Who are some of these players in the CCHA? Maybe players on lower NCHC teams that maybe could flip.
All right. Well, Brett Larson's aboard. We'll see what happens in the next week when it comes to the rest of the staff. Like you said, the rumors we've heard, maybe a little bit of we've heard Corey Leyland. We've heard Paul Martin maybe taking over the defensive role. And we've heard Matt Cullen maybe taking over Paul Martin's role. And maybe getting more into the recruiting. And we've heard a lot of different things. It's going to be a wait and see, Viggs, and that's just what we're going to have to do. Just be patient.
The one thing about Matt Cullen moving to Paul Martin's former role is if you do that, you can't recruit off campus. So I think if you do have a GM, you are going to want them to be one of the 4 paid staff.
Okay.
because then they're able to go on the road and not just watch, but they're able to actually recruit on the road. And that's something that Chiswick has been doing for North Dakota. I talked to Brad Schlossman. I was like, how does that work when you have that GM who's out there? And he's like, yeah, I mean, they've got the 3 coaches who run practice. And even when Chiswick's around, he's like, you guys don't need me on the ice. I'll just chill on the bench and talk to the guys and do that. And you can puck movers out there to help a practice run, but there are limits.
So you're saying that he would need to take over that exact role, or not exact role, but a name like that or something like that. So you wouldn't want to replace Paul's position if he were to move up to like the defensive coach with another person. You need to really keep it to those 4 paid coaches, correct?
Just that if you have a GM person, they've got to be one of those 4.
Understood. Because then, and most likely it'd be a hockey guy anyway. It's going to be somebody you probably want out there, helping out with practice, like we've seen Paul Martin every time we go to practice.
But he can't coach during practice.
No, he just helps with pucks.
He just helps with pucks. He can coach a little bit one-on-one after practice. It's a weird thing in NCAA.
It is weird.
All these drafted players, you think.
See, I didn't know that. I'm sitting there watching going, what's he doing?
Yeah, like Jacob Leroy, like he's out there to help move pucks and get drills going and stuff, but he's not out there running them or coaching. It's just the way that's
probably why I can't see practice like you do, because I didn't even know that.
So like you've got Miller, you've got Gordon, you've got Potter, you've got Motzko. Those are the 4 guys who could coach during practice.
Okay.
Anybody else out there would not be able to.
So many weird rules. And then you look at something like football and they got like 50 coaches.
It's weird.
It is weird. All right. Well, we need to actually get to the tournament, what the show was going to be about before all this coaching stuff happened. But first, let's talk about Cascade CBX Sport Vigs. Claim your $5 sample, free shipping.
Yeah, help us out. Go to cascadecbxsport.com/team and get your $5 sample. The shipping's included that. It's 300 milligrams. You can try it out. And I think anyone that's tried Cascade CBX Sport becomes a believer. Me, when I'm coaching, when I'm playing, when I'm doing my weekend warrior stuff and I'm sore, I want this Cascade CBX Sport. It's one of those things that reduces inflammation, reduces stress, and it's just an all-around nice product. So try it out. $5. Get a sample jar. Try it for yourself. Trust the shield. Stay on the field.
All right. This is the first regional we're going to talk about, but let's first go and check out the whole thing here, Vigs. The tournament field. What are your initial thoughts here? We got Michigan 1. North Dakota is the 2 overall seed. Michigan State is the 3. And, of course, back up at the top, Western Michigan is the 4. Really no surprises there.
Yep, no surprises. I do think that Loveland is one of those really difficult regionals when you start to compare the matchups to the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
I think we get that rematch of Western Michigan, Minnesota State. That's going to be one to watch. Denver getting their home ice advantage in Loveland against an Eastern team, Cornell, will be very interesting as well. David Carl seems to have his team playing well at the right time of year. Seems like they found a goalie. They probably have the best defenseman in college hockey. That historically has been a recipe for success in the NCAA tournament.
And kind of while we're talking about here, we got our bracket challenge, first time ever. We got over 150 people playing in it. Let's get more Vigs. It's a fun little thing we're doing this year. Finally, I figured out how to have it built into GPL.
We're working on a prize package. It could include some Cascade CBX Sport, maybe some swag. We're still putting it together though. So get your bracket in as quickly as you can. We do have to predict scores in here. So if you're trying to do it last minute, make sure you take time for that.
Yeah, you predict scores. Obviously pick the winners. There's, I'm not showing the actual bracket challenge right now. This is just the main bracket, but we could look at that later. But let's look at the games that start tomorrow. Starting off, Michigan State hosting Connecticut at Worcester.
I feel like Michigan State got a really good bracket here. They haven't made it to a Frozen Four in a long time. They've had 3 Big Ten titles here in a row now and just haven't been able to get over the hump of the tournament. I think this is a great region for them. UConn has been a really inconsistent team in Hockey East. They just barely squeaked in. If Ohio State would have won the Big Ten championship tournament, they would have been out. So good matchup, I think, for Sparty. And the next game, probably two of the more confusing teams in the tournament. Dartmouth, I just don't believe their strength of schedule. Those Ivy League schools that don't play as many games, don't really get non-conference tests.
But can you trust the Badgers either?
Well, I think the Badgers are one of the most inconsistent teams in the tournament as well. Like they've shown the peaks and the valleys, so you don't know what you're going to get there.
Oops.
But I definitely have Michigan State getting out of this region.
Okay.
Nice little gift there for Adam Nightingale and his team. They've got some strong players. Porter Malone, I think, has been the best freshman in college hockey this year. Charlie Strammel's been really good for them. Gives them some big, heavy forwards to play with. And then Trey Augustine has really done really well in his career. Maybe it pays off here in the NCAA tournament.
And so it's going to be interesting because, Michigan State kind of needs to prove after the last 2 years of kind of being a high seed and not performing. It's interesting. We do not know the times yet for the finals. It's kind of been weird that ESPN's like waiting till the games are played. I a little shocked by this. It's kind of weird. I mean, the thing is, they don't even know. The people who have tickets don't even know when their games are going to be. That has never been the case.
Has not been the case before. Very interesting. But, if you're in Worcester for a Saturday, I guess you just get to be patient for this game. Once again, these games should be played at Michigan State, at Dartmouth. Just saying.
I kind of like Dartmouth out of that first one, just because of the inconsistency, and they've got something to prove. Weeks hey, week schedule, we've been at least winning, so this is their chance to shine. This whole Worcester Regional.
This is their chance. I agree.
Oh.
I'll be watching this one to see what the Big Green looks like.
Sioux Falls, of course, North Dakota is taking on Merrimack, who took care of Hockey East, winning the tournament as an 8 seed. Should North Dakota be sleeping on Merrimack here?
Probably not sleeping on Merrimack. They've been one of the hottest teams in college hockey since Christmas. They've done really well. I think they have the most wins since Christmas in college hockey. So they're going to be a dangerous team. Mm-hmm. But I do think North Dakota, Dane Jackson did a great job reloading that program. He took some chances on some young CHL guys they've developed over the year and have been key players for them. And, they do get the somewhat home ice advantage in Sioux Falls. I don't think it's as good an advantage as Nate Lehman is talking about in the press conferences leading up to this tournament, saying it's like a youth tournament where two teams fly in from, long ways away and have to play each other. It's like, then vote for home ice in the regionals, Nate, and then you'd be having the Bobcats at your rink, like you usually do in the NCAA tournament.
Providence and Quinnipiac, that might be the game of the day tomorrow.
Probably the closest game. Providence has found their goalie the second half as well. McQueen has been a good goal scorer for them. Quinnipiac's done very well in the tournament the last couple of years. Again, I don't think Quinnipiac's strength of schedule has been as good this year as maybe it could have been. So I give a lot of weight here to seeing Providence and North Dakota in the final.
Providence, North Dakota. All right.
I like the Fighting Hawks coming out.
Have you made your picks yet, by the way?
I have. I got them in this evening.
Okay. I was looking down the list earlier today, and I noticed you hadn't yet. So make sure you get those picks in, folks.
Yeah, and of course, the Providence Quinnipiac game is streaming only. So
yeah, there it is, ESPN Plus. I might have to get that login from you.
Hey, we're all about sharing at GPL, right? I can't share with all of you, but
I only used it for a couple games last year. I'm like, that's all I want to watch it for. And then I didn't dare try to log in. I'm like, what if he all of a sudden gets a message? Somebody logged in. I'm like, it's June.
I'll just log back in and kick you out. Don't worry.
All right. Well, before we get to the second half of our picks here, Vigs, Cub Foods. Hey, this is a big weekend for college hockey, the weekend of the year. What a better place to get all your food and needs for this weekend.
Yeah, you should definitely be stocking up at Cub. There's a local Cub by most of you, I'm sure. They're always stocked with great inventory. They've got great specials, great deals, great produce. I went down there. I got some avocados, some red onion. I'm going to have some guac on hand. I know it's green, which might be the wrong color if you're cheering against North Dakota, but guacamole is delicious, and I get it at Cub. If I'm looking for a couple beverages to help get me through, a lot of your Cubs are going to have liquor stores attached. You can get some of that THC stuff if you're looking for that too. If you don't have time, you can order online. You can get it picked up. You can get it delivered. I mean, Cub's great. They're one of us. They sponsor this podcast. They're on PJ Flex headset. When Dickeytown Athletes is making announcements about players coming back, Cub is behind that. So shop happy, shop Cub.
All right. We head to Loveland in what could be the overall best and toughest region.
Region of death in Loveland. I think Minnesota State is that one CCHA team that was, on the bubble. They had about 4 teams that were all right there, 14 to 20.
Mm-hmm.
Very fine margins for those teams getting the tournament. Minnesota State won their league tournament, so they're in. And, of course, they play Western, who they played a great game against last year. Great goaltending matchup in that one. I'm looking forward to it. It should make Friday afternoon extra special. And then Denver, Cornell.
ESPN Plus? Really? Urgh.
Yeah, just to make David Carl happy, right? He's the one who said, let's make this tournament as big a spectacle as we can, so let's put it on the plus.
Are they punishing him? Are they just mocking him now?
I don't think they're mocking him, but, an ESPNU for the other game as well. As much as we talk about how it's great to have all these games televised and stuff, the numbers haven't been great for the regionals because of the way that they do it. So challenging there.
It is challenging. So who do you like coming out of here?
I like Denver coming out of this region.
Mm-hmm.
I think DU has really turned it on the second half of the year. I think it was hard for them to move up into the polls into a 1 seed, just the way things started to shake out. We saw the MPI at the end of the year going into those last games, 1 through 4 were locked, which was interesting in this new environment that we're in with the MPI. But I just do think Eric Bolkamp's a great defenseman. Man, what would the Gopher season have looked like if Bob Motzko had gotten him into maroon and gold instead of red and gold?
Yeah, because he was up at Bemidji, wasn't he?
He was at Bemidji. He played on the World Junior team. Clearly there was an opportunity there, but oh well, he's at Denver. He's had a great year, and now they've got their CHO goalie who's really been hot, a little undersized. He was the NCHC tournament most outstanding player. He's playing well. So, and you get the Loveland advantage, of course, for Denver, which some people say doesn't mean anything, but we'll see.
Yeah, I guess we will see. Let's go up to Albany. That's where Michigan headed, Viggs. They've earned it. They won their tournament. They get Bentley.
This Michigan team does seem built different. When we've seen them play the Gophers, their high-end talent is very, very good. When they handle the puck on the power play, it almost looks like a NHL power play at times, how easily they're able to escape pressure, make tape-to-tape passes, get seam passes through without any challenge from the penalty kill, and they've gotten some good goaltending. I think this Michigan team is probably the best one that they've brought to the tournament, probably since like the Kyle Connor days. And it's a deeper team too. Like they've got some juniors and seniors at the bottom of their lineup who have shifted down because of the talent that they've been able to bring in. And it's going to be a tough team to beat. And Bentley will have their hands full. Atlantic hockey, always not a pushover, the team that gets out of that league.
They've upset quite a few times.
I don't think it's going to happen this one, just because of the depth of scoring that Michigan has. And we always know the officiating can be something to watch. And if they get a lot of power play opportunities, I think they'll have an easy chance against anybody.
And what a nightcap Friday night. Duluth and Penn State. Wow.
Boy, I mean, if you could pick like 2 vibes that are completely different, I think Minnesota Duluth and Penn State would be totally different vibes. You've got Scott Sandelin, who's just that gritty, tough, top line, tight hockey games. And then you got Penn State, who is just, money banks this year, getting in Gavin McKenna. Friday night primetime, that's going to be a fun one to watch. I'm interested to see how Minnesota Duluth plays against Penn State, because we have seen the Nittany Lions get these up and down hockey games where they just lose their structure and they're just kind of pond hockey-ish. Minnesota Duluth usually is not that kind of team. They are not going to let that happen. So it'd be really an intriguing matchup. Obviously, Minnesota Duluth has their great top line.
Power play.
Power play. Yep.
And Penn State's the most penalized team in the league.
Sometimes it's because of the extracurriculars that inflates that a little bit.
It is the correct, but
you will get some power play chances in this one, I bet. And I'm interested to see the physicality and if there's any extra stuff that goes into that.
Okay.
So you get some of that 2-1-8 hockey against this Moneybags hockey. It'll be fun.
All right, let's take a look at your overalls. So who do you have coming out of Albany then?
I've got Michigan coming out of it.
Okay.
I just think that's the deepest team that they've put out there in a while, and I think they're going to advance.
So you've got Michigan, Denver, North Dakota, and Michigan State?
Yep, almost chalk.
Almost chalk, okay. Gosh, I think I had something similar. And actually, I believe all the way to the championship. I think I have Michigan and Michigan State in the title game.
I think I've got Denver and Michigan State in my title
Denver. Game. It's so good at this time of year. Oh.
Well, like we said all year, like the top 6 teams are all really good right now.
And I do want to point out this, Vigs. Earlier game this night, but you know what? Like David Carl wanted, it's on the big network.
Which should be good exposure for the college hockey game to be on a big network, because then you're in all the hotel bars across the country and it's easy for everyone to find. I think the ratings for this tournament have been a little lackluster the last couple of years. So I think getting on the big channel for the championship game should at least help that. And I'm sure they're hoping Gavin McKenna and Martone make it to the title game, because I think that might make the best narrative for their staff.
The Big Ten really needs to win, Vigs. They really, you know what, if they could get an all Big Ten final, kind of what I have, I don't pick very well, so it's probably not going to happen, but they need a win.
They certainly do. And I do think that this Michigan and Michigan State version that will be entering this tournament are probably the deepest teams that the Big Ten has put out in a while, probably since the Gopher Tampa team. You know, these teams run, 4 lines and at least 5 or 6D that are pretty high end, and they've got good goaltending. And I think some of the Big Ten teams that have made it to the tournament before have been a little too young and maybe not deep enough to make these kinds of runs, because it's a mistake game in some of the tournament. And you need players who can play mistake free. And it helps to have veterans that can do that, and veterans who can support young guys to make contributions to the lineup.
Of the number 1 seeds, yes, you almost went chalk. You went 3 number 1s and a number 2. Are any of them, could any of them get upset game 1? And if there was one, who is the most vulnerable?
Who is the most vulnerable?
My thought, our North Dakota fans are going, I think North Dakota is the most vulnerable because Merrimack has been playing very well. They just won the Hockey East as an 8 seed. That's got to make some Fighting Hawk fans a little nervous.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty savvy call by you on that. Looking at Merrimack, like they had a really tough November when they lost to BU, to Providence, and to Notre Dame, to Dartmouth, to UConn. And since then, they've been pretty good. They've been real strong in the second half. Have gone on a run. They've won tight games. I think that's a good pick by you.
And really, Sue Slayer, I like this one too. I think Western is vulnerable against Minnesota State. You never know. Minnesota State could goalie you, Vigs. They could goalie you.
Well, I was there for that game last year, watching Western. And
he was amazing.
Tracy was really, really good. It felt like Minnesota State just wasn't able to get any really sustained offensive zone time. That was watching Rhett Pitlick turn over the puck, and it was hard to watch.
Oh, it was.
That probably wasn't a good fit for that roster,
I must say that was very fun sitting next to you. I went and sat next to you, and we just sat and watched that game. And you're telling, look at Rhett, he's got to do something, and he was just floating around. You were like, just watch him, what he does. And sure enough, they really could have used him, and Minnesota could have used him the year before when he got benched for the third period against BU.
Yeah. So Alex Tracy's a really good goalie.
Oh,
and they play a really tight structure, and they can be really frustrating to play against. So that will be an interesting one to watch.
Gosh, UConn is not bad either. God,
I don't think UConn's
they're not like last year. Yes, true.
No.
So yeah, maybe Merrimack, maybe Minnesota State. Those are good ones. There's always a bit. Actually, maybe last year there wasn't too many upsets. I don't think did anyone lose last year. I don't think it even did, but I'd have to remember. But it's going to happen, and it's going to be a surprise. I look forward to it. That's why it's the best weekend of the year, Vigs. It's 2 solid days of hockey, just crazy, and then a little lighter on Saturday and Sunday. When it was 3 days straight, it was even more crazy. But I love this weekend more than the Frozen Four when it comes to just hockey.
Yeah, it should be great. I like having the extra day of rest to spread out the games a little bit. I think it produces better hockey. Probably gives the fans who make the trip a day in between to kind of relax a little bit, and it's not such a rush. So
drink.
Yeah, maybe have a night out in the town, maybe for the media as well,
Yeah, it's going to be interesting in a couple of years, see how much the media goes between Fargo and Sioux Falls. They would never schedule them the same day. They got to do every other day, so it'll be interesting to see.
Definitely something to watch.
All right, let's get to overtime, folks. We are headed to overtime. You know what that means. It's Vigo's Beverage of the Week.
Okay, whenever I'm feeling a little under the weather, sometimes a Guinness is just the answer.
Yeah.
This little 3B pint, cures all ills. I think, right?
Interesting. Very interesting. All right.
It's basically health food. It's 4%.
Let's bring up the chat here. Yeah, we last week I wasn't really prepared for it because we had a show, but we're kind of changing the format a little bit. We're going straight to overtime now. We include it as part of our regular show. We're not going to have a long overtime this week. I got to get to bed fairly soon tonight, so we'll have to see what happens. No fans sign off anymore. I'm just reading some of the texts. Been working a lot. Obviously, I got our bracket picks this year, so hopefully we've got over 150 people participating. That's which is awesome to see. Let me see here. I'm going to take a look at it. I haven't looked at it today. You said you made your picks, Vigs? I'm
in there. I'm good.
I believe my champion, I picked Michigan State, which means they won't win, but that's what I picked. And so for those of you, or let's just bring it up here. Let's turn off the chat real quick. Press the right button here. Look at all these people playing. Now, one thing to note, if you notice here, there's no warning here, but I will show here. Give me a second here. Picks close 12:30 p.m. tomorrow. Once those picks are closed, then you can go to the leaderboard and view anyone else's pick. There'll be a URL, and you could pick. You can see what Align Rock wants or 1989s. You'll be able to see that. We'll also have stats. You'll see, how many people are picking this team or picking that team and whatnot. So more things will pop up on the bracket challenge once the bracket's closed. If you haven't got your picks in, get them in, because once 12:30 hits tomorrow, it's automatic. You will not be able to change your picks, and it'll be a too bad, too sad type of situation, Vigs.
Yeah, and you'll miss out on your Cascade CBX, probably some drip drop, maybe some swag. So
Yeah,
Get
so
in there.
it's a fun. Yeah, we're gonna get some pull tab stuff here, and try to get them to do that. Another big thing that we've been talking about, Vigs, is the transfer portal. We've been upgrading this. It's going to be very quick this year. Obviously, you see it loads, pretty quick here. We've already got 85 players in the portal for the women Vigs. That just started on Monday. This is last updated. Man, nothing's changed, since this morning. So, we're going to try to stay on top of it. We know it's crazy, but it loads a lot quicker than it used to. So this is one of the new features that obviously we want to keep an eye on. And boy, yes, people come from the men's site, but the women's site's very important. We get emails. We get what you said. Somebody messaged on Facebook, and I hadn't even noticed it.
Yep, I was on top of it, so we got that updated for them. So
that was nice of you to notice. So yeah, keep an eye on this. It's going to be crazy. Come, a couple weeks from now, got a couple grad transfers in here. Kind of wondering who Jacob Badal is, because how could he have 3 years and be a grad transfer?
Must be a really smart guy.
Maybe. Jeez. So we got that fun. I've been doing a lot of changes with stats. I let me bring it up here. I've been noticing some stats that I've been collecting over the, recently. These team stats end up being very interesting. Let me see if I can squish this in here. Boy, Minnesota did finish 63rd in the penalty kill Vigs. By far their worst. What's interesting is that let's go back to the
Not a very nice percentage.
Yeah, you go back to another year. Let's say penalty kill. They were number 13th back in 22 and 23. Even faceoffs, they were 18th.
Yeah, some of the drop-offs.
Or just last year. I mean, if I look at just last year's data here, penalty kill was not great last year. But look at this. We were third in offense. And then this year we're, what are we in offense? 43rd. I mean, so it's been interesting. I've loaded data all the way back to 2018, 2019. It's just interesting. So if you're a stats person, check it out. I'm trying to make some improvements, doing a little nerdy stuff here. Since I'm unemployed, I have the time to do it. So people, make sure you check out all the stuff we've got going over there on GPL.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to look at the Gophers from last year to this year. Just they were leading the Big Ten in scoring last year, and this year I think they were last. Just a huge drop off, and the coaches are still sending some of the same messages out there. So there's sometimes a saying that each coach has a shelf life, and maybe that just hit its time at Minnesota.
We may never know. Yeah, you did eventually get like a text from Bob, didn't you? It's kind of thanking you and things like that, didn't you? He probably was so overwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean, you talk to these coaches in these big transitions, and they just hear from everybody. So I get it. Very busy time for coaches, and I'm sure it was a tough week for Bob.
I think we should just start a rumor. He and Larson are just changing. He's going to go back up to St. Cloud, and he's going to take over that program.
Yeah, I put a post out there. There's a football movie, Any Given Sunday, with Al Pacino.
Oh yeah.
And in the closing press conference, he's saying goodbye to Miami. He's just like, it was so great here, and all the people are good, and appreciate it. And then as he wraps up, and he's like, but it's time for a change for me too, and I'm going to be the head coach of that Albuquerque expansion team, and I'm signing Willie Beeman, taking him with me. It's like, if Bob did go to St. Cloud, I don't think he'd be taking Brody Zemer and LJ Mooney with him, but it would
so
be.
Who does St. Cloud get? Do they move Eric Rudd up?
I mean, I heard Nick Oliver was somebody that they were thinking about having as their next coach, but we'll see. It's a very different situation than Minnesota. You need somebody who's going to be more of a grinder there and figure it out, because it's a different place to recruit to and run than it was 8 years ago.
I still fear for that program. I still really fear 5-10 years if it exists, and that's not something I want to talk about.
I mean, I think it'll exist. It'll just be different. You know.
Oh, it's Figs donating a bottle of Stags. I don't think so.
No. No thanks. I would maybe offer a tasting. Maybe.
Let's actually keep this up on the screens.
Maybe I could offer a tasting. We'll see. We'll see how I'm feeling as the tournament's going on.
You know, we're kind of, you had just left yesterday, and we are kind of talking pizza a little bit with Peyton Owens a little bit, and then we got to talk about you and how you're pizza making, and I'm like, if we could get you with some of Jim Roosevelt's maybe sauces and stuff that he had at Campus Pizza, maybe we could get some combination, because that was a good sauce they had there, a little spicy to it. I'm like, and he's like, gosh, I got to figure out what it is. You got to figure out what the recipe is. But I'm like, maybe we need to have a little summer pizza party sometime.
Yeah, a little pizza off. Jim's obviously got the experience on me, but I
yeah, but I think it's been so long now. He's might have lost his touch.
Could be, but that was the best spot. I remember when Brian Deutsch started a SID at Minnesota. One of the first thing he did was like, hey, can we meet at Campus Pizza and introduce each other to each other and talk about how this is going to go? And it's like, that's a great idea, Brian. Campus Pizza it is. Spicy special. Let's split one.
I think I was at that one, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, that might have been the last time we had a spicy special.
Could have been. It was the go-to order for me.
Yeah, we met Deutsch down there, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
And then who did we? We didn't. We met one of the Star Tribune reporters at the Blue Dart. Megan.
Yeah, Megan Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't seen her in ages. Is she even still at the Strip? Probably.
I don't know. She kind of transitioned out of sports, I think, after doing baseball for a while. So I don't know.
I'm just reading some of these chats here. We need to.
By the way, this is because the outdoor game, not actually.
Yeah. So maybe they should do capacity. What was the percentage of capacity at the football stadium? That would change things.
Right. That would be a better way to compute that number.
Yeah. So that's definitely misleading. Just like it was misleading the year Minnesota had their Ohio State outdoor game. So
yep.
You don't think we try to do that again, do we?
I mean, with a new head coach, maybe you'd be looking to do it. It's a way to, provide a special experience. I do feel like the outdoor game gimmick has kind of diminished a little bit here and there. But if you're going to do one, Minnesota's a good place to do it because usually you get pretty decent weather. The only problem is it could get too cold.
All right. Well, we haven't talked about it yet, but sort of one of our colleagues that, I knew her a little bit, Jessie Pierce and her family, basically her entire family, except for her husband, died in a fire last Saturday. I woke up Sunday morning when the news started getting out. I'm like, what's happening? I didn't understand what was going on. I'm like, I think Hoppy said it. He's like, he had put something out and I didn't know what it was in reference to. And I just kind of waking up. This is like the worst thing we've had in the hockey community in a long time, Vigs. It's hit everybody hard. Last year, I posted that picture of Jesse and I at the World Junior kind of breakfast or lunch. I think it was a breakfast we had at the summer showcase. I was just left speechless. It's just a stunning, unfortunate event.
Yeah, stunningly sad. Jesse was such a warm person. If you were in the hockey media community, like you'd see her anywhere. High school tournament, college game, pro game, showcase, World Juniors. I came to a game for the World Juniors at Grand Casino this year, and I saw Jesse was sitting next to me, and I was like, I knew I was going to have a good positive conversation going the whole game, and a lot of entertaining stuff would be going on, and she'd be thinking about her Taco Bell order or what's that happening, and just always fun. And she just put herself out there in the hockey community and made a mark for herself. And I think one of her trademarks was just that positive smile and attitude.
A couple of years ago, 3 or 4 actually, maybe 3. she did a space, it was still an X space, a Twitter space where you're just kind of doing audio and you have people come on with you. And she was doing it on her phone. It was late at night and I hopped on there. We're all kind of BSing. And it was kind of funny because she's talking and then she thought she was off the air. She thought she was done. And you could hear her messing around in the kitchen and doing some things. And I'm desperately trying to message her on Twitter because I didn't have her text number. I'm like, you're still on. You gotta make sure. Don't say anything. She didn't do it. She didn't say anything bad or her husband or anything like that. But it's just kind of a fun memory I have of her. And obviously, our fun little pictures with the World Junior Trophy last summer. It was just a fun thing to do. And like you said, boy, was she full of life. And boy, did she love her kids. And I'm kind of surprised we haven't heard anything yet. What happened? Because it's like, what? It's just, it's so hard to come to terms with something when you're like, it's hard to understand. How does something like that happen? And her husband, Mike, just lost his entire family. Even his dog. This is, I don't even know how to talk about this because it's just like, it's awful.
Yeah. Can't imagine it. I feel really bad for him and the loss. And you just see the outpouring of
it's been
the hockey community supporting.
It's been so good,
that family, and it's hard to understand.
They've made a ton of money on the GoFundMe, which is wonderful, just wonderful. And the tributes from the NHL to different teams. It was a national donated $10,000 to the GoFundMe. Boy, she didn't know how much she was loved, probably, with all the people talking about her. Other teams putting up flowers for her, in Tampa and things like that.
Well, I just think she was always scrappy. She was always out there writing for the hockey magazine or whatever, just trying to stay out there and stay engaged and keep writing and keep interviewing and keep podcasting and doing all of her stuff. She was a scrapper. She wasn't making a killing at it because she was still working at Loggers Trail, slinging, hot dogs and beers to anyone who'd come by the course. She'd post those videos, but come on by.
Yeah,
I could do some business. She wasn't doing it to get rich. She was doing it because she was passionate about it, and it's a good time.
It was, but I have very happy memories of her with my limited interactions with her. I think I ran into her a couple times at the Frozen Four a couple of years ago in St. Paul. She was down there and going to Reed's, and there she is talking with Tom Hauser. We know Tom Hauser is kind of a big behind the scenes guy with college hockey and Hobie Baker in the past. So it was fun seeing her there. And like I said, it's a stunning thing. I just can't imagine your husband, you're on the road somewhere and how do you break that kind of news? I just, like you said, you shake your head and it's just like, cause it's the most awful thing ever. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring down the podcast, but I had to mention her because I knew her a little bit. Yep. We're not friends. I think the last time we texted was back in July of last year, but still, just to have a small little connection with somebody who's so bright and so well loved was very cool. So, sorry to bring down overtime, but I saw that podcast with Judd and Kirsten, and I'm forgetting the third guy's name.
Declan.
Yes. Wow. Yeah. What a show. What a show. And to be able to do it, just a few days after she's passed, it's just what an amazing job. What an amazing show for them to just talk and just work through it, because that's what she would do. She'd want to be on her own show right now doing the same thing if somebody else had passed. So, so what you got going this weekend? Is it going to be all hockey all weekend, or are you gonna get some pizza in there? I hope Friday night you gotta get some pizza.
Friday night, definitely pizza in there. Yeah. We're just trying to get a little healthier in our household. You know, we're all a little under the weather a little bit. So we're just trying to get healthy. Kids are on spring break. So we're going to enjoy the next couple days and get through it. And then we get back to the grind. But great hockey ahead. I'm looking forward to see what happens. There's always surprises in the hockey tournament. You know, I just think, you know, we probably don't expect a 4-versus-1 to happen this year, but I think
that would be fun.
I feel like it's like the last 10 years. There's always been one. You know, I can't think of the one last year, but it seems like it happens almost every year. Unlike basketball, where 1/16 is pretty much always safe.
It's only happened hockey, one time, maybe.
Close. Yeah. So looking forward to it.
So we will be back in 2 weeks. We'll do a Frozen 4 preview, and we'll obviously have a closing episode. I think you wanted to head to Florida for the meetings, maybe try to get them onto, I believe it's home regionals, and maybe getting the rosters up to 28 and 4 extra games. So that's your 3 as commissioner. That's your 3 goals this year.
3-point plan. I'm okay working in the reverse. I'm okay getting the 4 games added, then the roster, and then, you know, targeting future date for the regional home ice situation first round. But we'll get there.
It'll be fun.
We just need Nate Lehman complaining more about coming west for a game. He could have a home game this week if he really wanted to. If it meant that much to him. Right?
Rosters, regionals, 4 games in that order. There you go, Steve. You're right.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw the Steves talking earlier. It looks like they're going to meet up in Vegas. Yeah, a lot of people going to Vegas this year. A lot of people just go every year. So
doesn't matter where it is. I saw somebody throw out Nashville as a site. From all I've heard, Nashville isn't going to work. They don't want to give up their building for the weekend of
too much moneymaker with concerts.
Yeah,
and they have to. I believe Craig Floor said that the minimum you have to be out a full day before the first practice.
Yeah.
So is it Tuesday or Wednesday they have the first practice?
Yeah, probably Tuesday.
So Monday. So you got to have it from Monday until the end of the night. Just not going to happen in Nashville.
Yep.
What a party would be. What a great
fun
town to have
town, yeah. When North Dakota played that one-off game there.
And you could do that. You could get a one-off, but Frozen 4 would be tough. I wouldn't mind going to Washington next year. I have not been to Washington, D.C. since 1993, and that is one of my favorite places to go. There's just
cool city.
It's so much to look at, and I'm a nerd. I love the museums. I love it all, so we'll see. And then it's back to Chicago. Do we know when they would make a decision on, like, future bids? Do they kind of, end of this year, would they start thinking about the next 2 or 3 years?
I feel like they like to put out a series of them, like 4 of them at a time, from what I can remember. But I'm not the expert on the bidding, like a Todd Molesky or Brad Schlossman would be. So I would defer to them. I doubt they're listening to us tonight, but
no.
I
got to keep it short tonight because I got to get to bed fairly early. Got to be out of the house early tomorrow.
Well, enjoy the weekend, everyone. Watch all your favorite players on those smaller teams and see, which transfer portal targets you want to go after. Watch out for Evan Muir for Minnesota State. He's a potential transfer target, so watch his game.
Yeah, just pay attention. Next couple weeks, a lot's going to happen. I think you're going to hear rumors, but like you said, the fire really starts Monday the 13th, doesn't it?
Yep. And then just keep in mind, CHL guys typically don't want to announce until after their major junior season ends. So if you're targeting guys from that league, you have to be a little patient. I think they probably make overtures to teams for spots, but you won't hear it publicly until later.
All right. Well, have a good weekend, Viggs. It's always fun.
You as well.
I definitely will.
Stay safe on the road.
Definitely stay safe, people. You too. that's going to do it for this episode of the Gopher Puck Live podcast. You know, we're scheduled to be back in 2 weeks, but if something happens in between, we'll definitely have a show. Either way, thank you for tuning in for the Gopher Puck Live podcast, and we'll catch you next time. If you are watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and get notified each time we go live or post a video. If you listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate our show and leave a review. Pizza.